Welcome to Lenten Reflections. I'm Pastor Michele.
And I'm Pastor Kathy.
So we are on the 4th week of Lent already. This is just going by so quickly.
It is.
So I suggested that we film today with the gazebo in the background because I was thinking about something that was so fun about a year after I got to this church. And so this was way back in 2016. And there was this thing called Pokemon Go that people were playing with their phones. Do you remember that?
I remember that, yes.
And so for those of you that are not in the know, Pokemon Go was, I think it was like a game app. I'm not even quite sure, but people would put it on their phone. And so what they would do is they would have as they were traveling around, they would see a map of the area that they're in, and they would see locations where there were these Pokemon characters. And so they would go to where they would see the character, and they would use their phone to throw a Pokeball, whatever that is, and hopefully catch that Pokemon. So, of course, with Pokemon, there's this tagline, gotta catch them all, right? And so it was really quite cool because people were leaving their homes and they were engaging in community with people and places. And this gazebo was one of the places where people could go
Oh my goodness.
to catch Pokemon. And so we got to meet a lot of our neighbors and even actually people outside of our neighborhood that were really hearing about this was a good location, so they would come here. And I think that game is still happening because someone from our church told me that they saw someone probably a month or so ago that was at the gazebo.
Oh my gosh. Still going.
Still going. So I was just thinking, as we were thinking about connecting with our neighbors and as part of how we connect with God, that this would be a really good place because it just reminds me that this is one place where we are connecting with our neighbors because our neighbors are coming here
It's true.
to connect with the Pokemon.
And while I was here, I noticed that there were a lot of neighbors who walked their dogs in this great big parking lot. And so we got some dog biscuits and tried to come out and meet all of our neighbors and meet their dogs and give the dogs a dog biscuit. And we had a bowl of water out here for the dogs. That was hard to keep full, or just, it seemed to have legs. But it was a great way to meet our neighbors.
Indeed. And I think that it's hard because the pandemic kind of
yes,
stopped some of these behaviors that people were able to meet with each other and made us a little suspicious of each other. I brought a poem that I want to read because I think that might help us as we're thinking about our neighbors and connecting with our neighbors. This is by Robert Frost from the book You Come To. And this poem, you may know this poem. It's called Mending Wall. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun and make gaps even two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone. But they would have the rabbits out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps, I mean. No one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time, we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go. To each the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are lobes, and some are so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes to little more. There where it is, we do not need the wall. Here is all pine, and I am all apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savaged arm. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. I was just thinking about that in terms of connecting with the community. And I was thinking about this poem in terms of his neighbor who felt that good fences make good neighbors. Boundaries, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I wonder how that fits in with our connecting with our neighbors.
I think that after the pandemic, we have been behind walls. I've been behind the walls in my house. We haven't gone to the grocery store as often. We haven't gone to restaurants. We haven't been in church. We've had to do church a completely different way, and we've worn masks so that people can't see our whole face. I was thinking about my sister, whose only grandchild was born during the pandemic, and how sad it made her that her grandson couldn't see her whole face, and wondering about this child who was growing up seeing only the top half of people's faces. We have had a lot of walls over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And while I think that good boundaries are really healthy, they help me know what's mine and what's yours, so that we don't offend one another in that way. We do have to come out from behind our own personal walls in order to connect with one another.
I guess we can't have those measuring tapes out all of the time for the social distancing.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because Robert Frost seems to be on the side of, do we really need the fences? And his neighbor seems to feel like yes. And I can
to keep the cows in.
To keep the cows in, if you have cows. But still, good boundaries are important. But I was thinking about another story that my daughter was telling me on the way home from work yesterday. She works with babies. And so there is a baby that's about 4 months old, I want to say, and another baby that is maybe a month or two older, just old enough that she's able to crawl, inchworm style. And so the little baby had a toy in her hand, and the little tiny bit older baby saw that toy in the hand and thought, wow, I would like that toy, and made her way over. And fortunately my daughter was there and was able to help her not just reach out and grab that toy, because of course at that age babies don't really have any concept of anything beyond themselves. Sometimes those walls can help us, those fences can help us to be able to distinguish myself and others, and again our healthy boundaries. But
When we were talking about reconnecting with God in the different ways that we do that, um, I was remembering a book that I read by Martin Buber that said that um, his idea was that we find God in the space between us. And I think that we will talk later about finding God within ourselves, but there is a tendency sometimes to think of ourselves as having everything that there is, or being always right, or having the only way of doing something. And it's not until we connect with another beloved child of God who is created so differently that we can begin to have a deeper relationship with the God who made us both. And so Buber's idea is that we find God in this space between us. And I like that.
I like that too.
And that's how, when we come to worship together, we find God in that space between us. We find God in the fellowship. We find God in the singing and the praying and all of those ways that we are together. I think there's something really important about being together. We're made for relationship.
We are. And weren't you telling me about another colleague a distance away who had reflected on pandemic worship?
Oh, yes, yes. My former colleague Mikey Voska on Vashon Island, who's the pastor of Vashon Community Church, was posting his link to this coming week's online worship, and he said something about online worship is fine, but it's sort of like watching a family eat dinner online. You see them and you see what they're doing, but something is really lost in the experience. I wish I'd printed it out.
That was
But
a
it was
great.
so clever.
It was
yeah.
a great observation. I would say though that when we first came back into the building, even being together in the sanctuary sometimes felt like we were observing, because we weren't able to sing together, and so all of the music had to be recorded separately, and we were not able to go up to each other and shake hands and
Yes.
offer peace to each other. So again, that was we made so many different shifts that in some ways I think when people were coming back, although people were glad to be back with each other in person, those that felt comfortable to be in person,
There's still that distance.
there was still that distance, and it just didn't feel the same. And I think that's the breaking down the fences and being
Yes.
able to come together, and to that space that between you and me and God, that God space that people just weren't able to experience. Only they weren't able to express it quite like Martin Buber.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited. I love that the Pokemon Go game is still happening, and I'm hoping that as people are easing back into community, that we're going to see more people stopping at our gazebo for Pokemon Go, and people walking the dog, and that we're going to be able to move beyond the church parking lots and go out into the neighborhood too, to participate in greeting our neighbors and getting to know our neighbors.
I think that's important in our neighborhoods too, and where we shop. All of those places, it's important for us to reconnect with others, because that's where we draw closer to God.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, that's a lot to think about today. Do you have a prayer for us?
I do. I have a very long prayer, and this prayer comes from the Reverend Nadia Bowles Weber, who is a Lutheran pastor and an author of several best-selling books. And because it is a long prayer, I'm going to invite people to pray with your eyes open, or if you prefer to pray with your eyes closed, that's okay. You may fall asleep, and maybe that's not as good an idea. But Nadia Bowles Weber is praying for all of the community, and so you may find some ideas that are a little bit startling or surprising to you in this prayer. But I invite you to open your heart, open your mind, and pray along. Let us. It starts with a scripture from Luke, the 7th chapter of Luke. Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the town, a man who had died was being carried out. He was his mother's only son, and she was a widow, and with her was a large crowd from the town. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion for her. He came forward and touched the bier, and the bearers stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, rise." The dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Let us pray. God of compassion, as you did in Nain, enter our city gates. Enter into the somber roads down which our hearses drive, and the glad streets down which our children run. Enter the parks where the junkies shoot up and the yuppies listen to jazz. Walk uninvited into starter mansions and cheap motel rooms that charge by the hour. Stroll into the cool air freezer section where the pregnant women escape the heat, and the bus stop benches where the weary wait. Enter every law office and adult bookstore. Step into the spaces we say we feel your awesomeness, and the places where we claim your forsakenness. Enter our city gates, God of compassion, as you did the city of Nain, and bless. Bless the things we mistakenly think are already dead. Bless that which we have already begun to carry out of town to bury. Bless our rocky marriages and our college-age kids who smoke too much pot. Bless the person at work whom we love to hate. Bless the chronically sick. Bless the one who has no one. Bless what we call insignificant and which you call magnificent. Bless it all, and love what only you can love, the ugly, abandoned, and unsanitary in the wash of humanity, upon which you have nothing but a gleaming compassion, when we have none. God of compassion, you saw the widow of Nain. We thank you for seeing us, for seeing our loneliness and our bravery, for seeing the times we can't say what we need to, for seeing the ones who have never felt like they are enough, but whom you know already are and always have been, for seeing the moments when we are more than we thought we could be, for seeing what no one else can or will. Thank you for seeing as beautiful what we call ugly. In your compassion, teach us to see each other. Reach out and raise us, God of compassion. Touch us as you did the wood on which the widow's son lay, and speak those same words to us. Young man, arise. Little girl, get up. To we who think we are not worthy to be loved and medicate ourselves with food and booze and shopping, say, rise up. To we who have been hurt by those who say they follow you, say, rise up. To those who feel unworthy of forgiveness, say, rise up. To the ones who care for the least of these and who feel too burnt out to keep going, say, rise up. To we who are holding on to resentments like a security blanket, say, rise up. To those who hide their failings behind their good works, say, rise up. To the unloved child who has no idea that one day they will change the world, say, rise up. And when again, God of compassion, you have raised the dead, when again you have made whole that which is broken, when again you have reached into the graves we dig ourselves and loved us back to life, don't stop there. Like the young man of Nain, help us to sit up and speak. Give us words that are not empty affirmation, but give us strong words, as real as the very soil from which you raised us. Give us the words, Lord, but also give us the pause before the words, please. And then, as you did the son to his mother, give us to one another. Make us one in this fractured world. And help us to know that when we do not have enough compassion for the road ahead, that you do. And that is enough. Amen.
Amen. Oh my gosh, that was wonderful.
Isn't that beautiful? I love that.
It is. Well, I guess for the practice this week, our invitation might be to go out into the community and to find ways to connect with neighbors and community.
Just to listen to stories.
Yeah, I think that is enough.
And that is enough.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.